Okay, this is the first reading from the third week of International Institutions and World Politics. This reading is called Why States Act Through Formal International Organizations. This paper was written in 1998. It attempted to establish a relationship between theory and international institutions, illustrated by the first subtitle of the paper, Putting International Organizations into theory and theory into international organizations. The first thing to understand is that the authors are institutionalists. This means that they assume that states are the main actors in world politics, and they use international organizations to pursue shared goals, that is, goals between states. This article isn't a theoretical paper about international institutions and theory. It is about international organizations and theory, because this was a movement which was occurring around the late 90s towards a focus of international organizations as in the formal, concrete places where groups from around the world, from multiple states, met. Yes, okay. So the first point that the authors, who are both well-versed in international law as well, they're not just international relations theorists, bring up is this point about properties of international organizations. And then it goes through the functions that this property allows the international organization to carry out. So, firstly, what does centralization mean? A concrete and stable organizational structure and an administrative apparatus managing collective apparatus. This is the first property which defines an international organization. For example, GATT was an international institution and became an organization, and the World Health Organization, when it gained more structure, allowing it to meet at short notice and thus function differently. In other words, it helps support state interactions. Such a state interaction could be pooling. Pooling is the grouping together of resources, assets, equipment, personnel, effort for the purposes of maximizing or minimizing risk to users. It's basically like economies of scale. And if we have somewhere sort of central that can't move this fixed structure, the authors are arguing that like it makes it more accountable, it's more easy to use it to take advantage of these economies of scale. So pooling enables the World Bank to achieve economies of scale by carrying out large volumes of activities, establishing uniform procedures, and building a common body of data. It's basically just trustworthy. This is sort of like business meets IR. And also like joint production is another example of how this property has leads to a function. So experts from several European states communicate in subatomic research through the European Organization for Nuclear Research, CERN. The stable organization structure of international organizations addresses both issues, establish procedures for elaborating rules, standards, and specifications, enhance cooperation even when member states retain power to reject or opt out, even which they do in international organizations with relatively advanced legislative procedures. So what it's saying at the end is basically just confirming this idea of centralization being a common property of international organizations. This might seem quite basic, but I guess the point is that at the time, this was something that would need to be specified very clearly in this beginning of a theorization about international organizations, which is important. Okay. I've only got 50 seconds left. Independence is the second property that they said, and it leads to some functions or some other properties like neutrality or laundering, which is like this idea of state like interactions which states couldn't normally carry out, but they're allowed to under the guise of an international organization because it's more legitimate, I presume. We've got 20 seconds left. Conclude, this reading took a statist approach to the organization of world politics. However, it theorized the reason for the increased role of organizations and state interaction, that being that the centrality in their independence. It is vital, according to the authors, that we take international organizations more seriously and don't neglect them. However, that doesn't mean that they supersede states.